Today, slasher films get a peek through the looking glass. Hello and welcome to RotD Review of the Day, and today is Subscriber Suggestion Sunday, and today's movie comes to us from RotD Solon subscriber Tara Lynn, who is suggesting 2006's Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. If you want to submit something for next Sunday, for Subscriber Suggestion Sunday, go ahead and leave it in the comments below, or hop onto Twitter using hashtag RotedSuggestion. So, what I have come away with this movie is, I mean, first of all, this is one of my favorites. I have seen it many, many times now, at least 6 or 7. But it was suggested, and I haven't done a review of it, surprisingly, and it's about time to, so off I go. I try not to have any more than 48 hours between the time that I watch a movie and I record a review of it, or at least write my notes down. So it had been over a year. So I treated myself to a repeated viewing just yesterday, and ultimately, this movie really gets better with age and with multiple viewings. There's a lot of things that happen throughout the film that is subterfuge and sleight of hand, and you tend to pick up on a lot of the emotional ticks towards the beginning of the movie that you're not going to necessarily pay any attention to until you know what happens later. So multiple viewings of this one. It's not a full Game Changer Sixth Sense style, but it is interesting and worth repeated viewings. But regardless, this was a really fantastic look at the slasher subgenre of horror films and what makes them tick. It really shines a funhouse mirror up against it, while at the same time never really making fun of it. And to get into more details of that, I'm going to have to get into the categories. So, as always, 4 different categories, each one worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. And the plot of this one I gave a 21 out of 25. This movie presupposes that all of the major slasher genre killers out there, your Michael Myers and your Freddy Krueger and so forth, that they do exist, that there is a Haddonfield, Illinois that was terrorized by Michael Myers on multiple Halloweens, that there was a Camp Crystal Lake that was terrorized by a masked Jason Voorhees many, many times. But it also presupposes that these were not any supernatural killers whatsoever, that they were simply serial killers that had a massive amount of patience, training, flair for theatrics, and lore building, and they let the mythos surrounding them develop on its own, and had that little flourish to it where they, okay, I'll have a hockey mask and I'll do this and I'll reappear once a year, every year on the and so on and so forth, until finally a mythos was built. And the movie, on a plot level, follows the character of Taylor Gentry, who is a graduate filmmaker student and is following Leslie Vernon, who is an up-and-comer. He wants to get in on this. He wants to have his own name written in the history books as a slasher serial killer. He has worked very, very hard for many, many, many years, training his body, learning sleight of hand, learning anatomy, all sorts of tricks and tips and so on and so forth. And he is preparing for a night that is coming up very soon. He has worked on building the lore of his character, integrating it within this town that already had a history, and then utilizing that for this one special night to have his first slaughter. And the filmmakers are following him around, watching him prepare, and he's letting them in on the behind-the-scenes stuff of what that entails. So we get a really unique view, and it really is a bit of a love song to the slasher genre. All the things that really make the slasher subgenre work and be great are addressed in this. The fact that the 1970s had such a different feel than the 1980s as far as slasher films go. The fact that the killer will always be just a few steps behind a person that they're chasing, even though they look like they're walking. All of this is addressed in terms of theatrical preparation. And it's really, really fantastic to see it all fleshed out in the killer's eyes as somebody that is trying to make this lore build and be wonderful and have this flourish to their bedlam. There's a lot of interplay and back and forth, and the rapport that they have together is always somewhat undercut by just that slight unnerving feeling that we are dealing with a serial killer madman, and why does he want this film to be made? What is the goal here? Why is he potentially exposing himself to this? What kind of danger are these filmmakers in, even when they're hugging and laughing with him and getting pumped as they do a flyby, where they basically just have a quick appearance, so that the intended target victim, did she actually see something, or was it just somebody in the shadows? That was a planned theatrical thing, and when it was pulled off, a lot of hugging and so on, like, we did it, yeah, score! But, at the same time, how much danger is Taylor and the film crew actually in? And the movie builds and builds and builds and comes to a place where it's a surprise for everybody involved. And I really, really, really loved it. I thought it was incredibly intelligent. And like I said, the level of subterfuge and underlying elements that make it so grand, by the end of it, it makes it worth watching more than one time. But that first time is always just that special, unique, you get the notion that you are watching something truly original. And I love that. I really do. So 21 out of 25 on the plot score there. The Intent, I gave a 22 out of 25 for all the reasons that I mentioned before. This is fun. This is smart. This is invigorating, while still dishing out a surprisingly good slasher movie. The best example for what this movie is to me is if you watch the Penn and Teller Cup and Ball Trick. If you haven't seen it, you should look it up on YouTube. Penn and Teller, the magicians, they do this very simplistic, very kind of, Magic 101 kind of cup and ball trick thing with the sleight of hand. And they perform it in a way where they explain it throughout. And they explain every single step of it, and they do it with such transparency. And yet, when it finally all comes together, they still manage to fool the viewer. And that's the thing that I really loved about this movie, is every single element gets explained. You know how he's doing what he's doing. You know that the lights are turning off because he has a remote control attached to the fuse box. But it doesn't stop the surprises from really getting you. That, whatever you're thinking of, somebody else is, the writer, the director, Leslie, however you want to put it, is always 5 steps ahead, no matter how much he has already offered that handicap, that, I'm explaining how I'm doing this, but you're still not going to really know how I'm doing it. And it's just fantastic how it operates on so many different levels like that. Another thing that makes this fun, and rose the Intent thing, is just how much of a love song it is for slashers. This had a lot of really great cameos in it. Kane Hodder, Robert Englund actually had not a starring role, but he had a good role in this one. Zelda Rubinstein, she was in this. It was very much such a love song to horror films and slasher films. And it showed throughout every single element of it. The acting, I gave a 20 out of 25. Everybody in this did a really exceptional job. I think the only thing that really put me off just a little bit, and I'm not going to say it was bad acting, but the interplay between Leslie and the guys behind the camera just was a bit unprofessional and juvenile at times. However, they were graduate students. This was not, it made sense from the character's perspective. Even though I didn't care for it a whole lot, it made sense for the mentality of, we're pumped on adrenaline while all this stuff is happening, but the reality of what will actually be happening has not fully hammered home yet. So I get it. Even though it really grated a bit, I still got it. Nathan Basil as Leslie Vernon was superb, and I'm really surprised that his acting career didn't really shoot to the stars when this movie was released. He did a phenomenal job as Leslie Vernon. Angela Goethals as Taylor Gentry. She was really great. There were aspects of her character that was just a little bit off, but the chemistry that she had with Nathan really made it work. The two really had this great interplay, great relationship, and the dialogue between the two characters worked so naturally off of each other that whatever faults I may be able to find in any individual performance is offset by the partnership that they showed throughout. The technical, I gave a 22 out of 25. The thought and details of the elements of this movie are what really make it. Every single piece of this film was thought of carefully, constructed meticulously, and it really showed. The technical aspects of it were just great, and the blood and the gore and all that was really on point. There was really nothing that I thought was distracting or poorly done as far as practical effects goes. The hopping back and forth between different cinematic styles was something that it so easily could have been jarring when it hops from documentary film mode to a standard camera in the ether watching these characters mode. It does hop back and forth between the two different styles, and it never felt jarring. It always kept pace. So that gives us a total score of 85 out of 100 points. I recommend this movie to any horror fan, but if you are a fan of the slasher subgenre in particular, this is required viewing. You really must watch Behind the Mask. It is a fantastic dissection of the slasher genre and definitely worth a watch. And that should do it. That's my review of 2006's Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. Again, if you want to suggest a movie for me for next Sunday, go ahead and leave it in the comments below or on Twitter using hashtag RotedSuggestion. Thank you very, very much for joining me here today. It means a lot to me. I really do appreciate it. If you like these videos, please click like and subscribe. Otherwise, remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.